You're listening to Liberty USA, sponsored by County Citizens Defending Freedom. As an American, you have freedom flowing through your DNA, and we are here to help educate, empower, and encourage you to stand for your freedom.
Hello, County Citizens. It's Lindsay here, and today I have the owner of Book It, CJ, and also a communications specialist, CJ Wheeler, in the studio.
Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Nervous.
So where are you from?
Originally, I'm from everywhere. I worked in media all over the country, so kind of a media gypsy. Grew up in Ferndale, Arkansas, so you'll never be able to beat the Patriot out of me. Definitely always going to be a rooted Patriot. Mm-hmm. But currently live about an hour and a half into America outside of Washington, D.C. So once you leave D.C., you pass some American flags, some Trump flags, and then you land at my house in Fort Valley, Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
How has the culture changed where you're from going through the pandemic and into the mandates?
That's actually a wonderful question. So in my neck of the woods, we have a lot of patriots, and it's a lot of country people, conservative people. There are a ton of local farms around in my area. And even in that rural of an area, there were still people who did the masking, still people, of course, who did the vaxxing and all of that stuff, and still people who, bought into the tyrannical lockdowns and all of that madness. But not as many as in the cities. And I think it ebbed and flowed. It depended on the thing that I'm kind of involved with deeply is the media. And were the media doing any kinds of pushes on how dangerous it is now? Ooh, you should wipe down your gas nozzles in your mail and all of that craziness and be very afraid. So our people in where I live are country folks. And so we are patriots, and we have God, and we have discernment. And so you would see an uptick in the grocery stores of people masking up and looking at you weird when you didn't have a mask, or trying to yell at you, but you can't hear them because it's all muffled, and that's wonderful. So you would have a little bit of uptick. You could literally track it if you followed what the CDC and what they were trying to scare you with at the moment. And then you'd see everybody at Target, mask up or whatever. But as far as I would drive into DC, and anytime I drove into DC, you didn't see anybody's face. It was just, they were constant sheep and drones, and they just followed it at all times. So I think there's a distinct difference between the way country people discern what's in the news and the way city people discern what's in the news, as in not discerning, just believing. So there is definitely, I think you have a higher concentration of TV believers in the cities and a higher concentration of God believers in the country, independent people.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's touch on your background for those who don't know who you are.
Okay, so I started in college, 2 degrees, journalism and radio, TV, and film. Wanted to tell you this earlier. I wanted to be the weather girl. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a cool job when I was in my teens. I was like, I want to do that. And didn't ever really, the doors to television kind of never opened, which I feel like was God, a wonderful moment. But always the doors to radio and talk radio always opened, which turned out to be a more conservative bent in life. And so I did have kind of worked in both ends of the spectrum. Right out of college, got a radio job as a news director of a one-person news department, me, and was doing news and all of that. And then that blossomed into another job at KCMO in Kansas City, which is a big talk radio station up there that Rush Limbaugh, I think, worked at for a while. And it's still a wonderful talk radio station, conservative talk radio station. But so throughout my 20-something years on air and doing producing and whatever, I lived in 5 different states and worked at numerous different talk radio stations. Wow. And in between the talk radio stations, I would it was because it's inevitable when you work in media and radio and television, you get fired a lot. I mean, that's just part of the thing. And it's not because you do anything, or sometimes it might be because you do something, but it's mostly because they change ownership, or there's different, there's just all kinds of things that happen. Maybe the talk show host gets a little too far out there or something, and then all of a sudden your whole show's gone. So you get kind of used to that gypsy life, which I had a media gypsy life for a very long time, from 97 until 2011. Yes, so I worked in media that whole entire time. Mostly in conservative talk radio. And then in between those gigs, I would work for months or 6 months or so at a regular television news network like an ABC, a CBS, and NBC of a local television in different cities like Dallas and San Diego and that sort of thing. And so I learned both sides of the world of media, in that I learned the conservative editorial talk radio thing, like what we're doing here. And then I learned the television more scripted. Everything is off the AP wire. You only can go this far, all newsy, but they're still giving you some editorial comment. And that was in, like I said, the 90s and early 2000s until 2011.
Wow. So was that a controversial time, going between both of the different party sides, Republicans and Democrats?
It's weird, right? Like, you could still apply the same skill set of as an executive producer, I was on air as a news person, but also as an executive producer mostly, which, if you don't know what an executive producer is, it's the person that helps you. They help you get the guests, they help you get the content, they help you get everything from coffee to whatever the host needs. And so that's what I was mostly involved in. And so using that, I could transfer into television and do that same sort of thing. So if there was, like, I was working at a television station one time and there was the tsunami in Japan, huge thing. I happened to know some people that lived in Japan. I got them on television. They told their whole story. So it worked in both worlds. You could do that. But I definitely learned whenever I was in television to keep my I got thrown out of a couple of TV stations. I don't keep my mouth shut very well. I'm just saying, it was good times. What are you going to do when the anchor of the television station is on air and he says, after Bush wins, that so-called election, that was a rigged election. As a TV anchor, you're like, what's wrong with you? And then you go have a conversation with him after, and then you're no longer allowed in the TV newsroom.
And then you get fired.
And then you're looking for that next gig. The truth. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So when I talked to you last, we talked about getting you on Liberty USA, and you said that you had a testimony that you'd share.
Right.
I've been waiting to hear it.
Yeah. So you asked if I would do an interview. And so in my business and what I do now, and also what I did when I was producing, was I don't do on air. I just rarely do any kind of interview at all. This is why I'm so good at it. Anyway, not good at it. It's weird. I'm an extrovert, but I just really don't like public speaking, and I don't like doing interviews. But the one thing that I will do an interview with is if it involves my testimony and coming to God. Because I think that's about a lot of people, and for me especially, that's kind of the only really good story that I feel like I have that's worth anybody listening, if they're going to be listening. So I had worked in media for all that time, up until 2011. And I wouldn't say I was a happy person. I would have told you, if you'd have met me between, 1997 and 2011, that I was a good person, that I was a Christian, and I was doing good works, and I was conservative and all that stuff. But I was really, it's weird. I was unhappy. I just really was unhappy. I was kind of angry all the time because I was working in that media environment where it's just constant bad news, bad all the time. And you're just spewing back and fighting back about the bad. And I would go ride my horse, and I would be out and seeing this beautiful sunset, and I'd be thinking about all the angry news stories, and it just wasn't disconnected. I couldn't disconnect from that nasty and being surrounded by kind of all that same nasty kind of people and everything. And I just wasn't happy. So I don't think God puts us on earth to be unhappy and walk around in that misery all the time. I think he wants you to enjoy the sunsets and enjoy life and be happy and do good works and, spread his joy and live in his light. And I wasn't. I was definitely living in the world. I had designer everything, living in a 7,000 square foot house in Rancho Santa Fe with a pool and a spa and horses and the whole thing, right? Like all of the trappings, designer purses, the whole thing, right? So 2009 hit, and that's when most everybody experienced the financial breakdown of the country with the Obama and Bush housing crisis that happened. And I was living in Southern California at the time, and I was living in this beautiful mansion. And then all of a sudden, my job got given to my 20-year-old intern, the job of the show that I'd been working on for 18 years. And it got handed to her, and I got showed the door. And God jobbed my life. I mean, I had no way to pay my bills. I had no way to do anything. And I remember I called 5 friends in Southern California. And because we were local celebrities, where I was, we had like steak houses with our names on the booth and like the whole entire, you couldn't go anywhere without people knowing who you were and that sort of thing. So that was the life. That was the worldly life. Lots of trappings in that. And then it all just got taken away. Like 6 months gone. Everything. I lived on my savings for a while. I called 5 people, and every single one of them had lost everything in Southern California. Yeah. And you would drive around, you'd see the big mansions and then it was like nobody's living in that house. And the houses you would go into, and people would have destroyed the insides of them because they'd invested so much and they'd been paying their house payments, and then their house would be taken away, or they couldn't afford it, or they'd lose their job. It was just destruction. So what ended up happening was I called one last person, and I said to this person, I was like, I've lost everything. My family can't help me. No one can help me. I'm on my own. I just need a place for my horses and my dogs, and I'll do whatever you need me to do to be able to stay in the attic of your home. And he was like, okay, well, I have kids that could be taken care of. I need the house cleaned. I need all of this stuff. I need you to cook and clean and blah, blah, blah. And I went from being an executive producer on a top-rated talk radio show, making 6-figure salary, to then cleaning somebody's house for them just to survive. And on the mountain that we were living in right outside of Southern California, he hadn't paid his mortgage in 3 years. So we were basically squatting on this house. I'd never experienced this side of life. I've always worked, but there were no options. Like tried to get a job at a television station. They weren't hiring. They were firing people in 30% waves, just firing. You couldn't get a job. Couldn't. And so I landed as best as I could, where I could, and sold what I had on Craigslist and just started selling stuff. But here was the great thing. So when you're in that, where you're losing everything, and God has jobbed your life, and you've gone from like here to, that is when God wakes you up, that you be grateful for your trials, because that is where he becomes very, very active. Because I had nothing else to do. There was nothing else to do except for stop, look at my life, and examine why I was so unhappy, and read the Bible. And that's all I did for an entire year, because I had nothing else. That and dig through designer purses looking for $1. I mean, I would just go through all my purses and all my stuff and sell stuff on Craigslist just to have. I remember one time I got a flat tire, and it was devastating because I had no way to fix it. And so that's a really bad place to be. No credit, no bank account anymore, no nothing. But he had to do that. I really think he does that to people to strip them completely so that they can come out of the world and into the light. And so that's what happened. I mean, he would send me like words, like learn about what is faith? What is faith? Faith is what I was having to do in that entire year. And mind you, I didn't know it was going to be a year. 2 years, I didn't know. And luckily it was just a year. But I felt like he just sent me all these lessons about faith and friendship and what's money and what are all these different things to give me the biblical perspective on what all those words were to rebuild. And once he rebuilt, the last one he gave me, the word was pride. And I had always been the kind of person that had either taken care of myself or took care of other people, and I never asked people for help. And so it was really a humbling experience, and I had to learn what it was to drop my pride and actually ask people for help, which is an important lesson, and it's very important. So I asked somebody for help, finally asked somebody for help where I didn't have to give them anything. And they said, there's a job in Washington, D.C. We just let a producer go. Come work for us in Washington, D.C. And I had $50 in my pocket, and I sold all the rest of everything else I had. I left my horse, put my dogs in the car, got my horse later, and drove across the country and started over in D.C. with $50 in my pocket in 2012. And that was 10 years ago now.
Wow.
And now, to fast forward, because I know this is only a 30-minute interview, I worked in several different places in D.C. God kept dropping me in all these different places, and then it would end after a few months. And I was like, why is this continue to be like an upended basket? And then at the last job that I was working at, I worked at Heritage Foundation for a while. I worked at Concerned Veterans for America, which is a Koch-run organization, for a while. Worked at a talk radio station there for a while. And then at the last place, they outsourced our whole entire communications department. And so one more time, I'm sitting out there with my box of stuff and my plant out of it, but once again, being let go for no reason. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, God, like, why are you doing this? I came to DC because they don't have a recession. They don't have problems here. I came to DC to build my retirement. I'm in my mid 40s. I need to start working on this stuff. And, my phone rang. And it was all the people that I'd been booking on shows at the place that had just let me go. And they were like, hey, if we hire you, will you continue to book us? Because you got us on more shows than you'd ever been on. And I was like, well, sure, absolutely. But I'm going to continue to try and work for another think tank here in DC. I'm absolutely going to try and work for a corporation or work for somebody else. It never even dawned on me, because we're never taught that you can be an entrepreneur and start your own business. And it wasn't until God literally made it happen. So I was like, okay, I'll do this for a month, but I'm going to keep looking for that secure job, right? So I did that for a month. By the time the secure job came to me, where I was offered at a nice think tank that you would know, the communications director position, I had already signed enough contracts with people to do the media booking and the PR that I was making like $45,000 more a year than the six figures that they were already offering me. So just in that 1 month, everything changed. Everything. But not for the trials. I wouldn't have been in the light to receive the gifts that God gave. So I've been doing Book at CJ since 2014, nonstop. It's been mostly me, but since what's happened in 2020, I now have a 4-person team, and CCDF, I'm so grateful, is one of my clients. Clay Clark is a client, Dr. Eric Naputi, attorney Tom Renz, Dr. Brian Artis has been a client. There's just a ton of people. Pastor Dave Scarlett is a client with His Glory. It's just so many people, so many great people in the fight for freedom for the country right now. So that is my testimony story, and that's what happened. And I hope I never have to go through that again. But if God wants to reborn me again, then maybe it'll happen. Is that a word? I think I just made up a word.
Well, first, thank you for sharing your testimony.
Thank you.
And to comment on your business, that's incredible. It sounds like it happened so organically and naturally.
It did. Right. And I think it's because, when you're walking in God, you're walking in that light, you just have to leave yourself open to Him. I mean, there were many times that He has spoke to me and said to do this or receive that. And you also, definitely a thing that I do is I give Him credit for everything that's happened. Every person that I've met, from the Steve Maxwells to the Clay Clarks, it's all Him. It's all in what He's doing. And my constant prayer every day is, God, just put me where you need me. If you think I've got something that's going to help you in this fight, then please just put me where you need me. And now here I am. And so I stopped, one of the big things was I stopped trying to control my life and force things and go, I'm going to fight against the world to try and get this thing. And I just started going with the thing that God wanted to make happen and just receive that. And okay, you want me to do this now? Okay, well, these people are being weird. And then they would be plucked out of my life. And then He would just send me the most beautiful, wonderful, same Christian in the light type of people. It's really been remarkable.
That's incredible. So you started your business in 2014. So from 2014 to 2020, I'm curious from your perspective of being in the media,
Right.
how have you seen the media change prior to 2020 to now after 2020 with censorship and all of that stuff?
It's astonishing what we're going through. I mean, every day I wake up and I think I'm shocked 2 and 3, 4 times a day now for 2 years. I've lost 20-year friendships with people in the media that are people I built my business on who fell for the pandemic, who fell for the vax, who fell for it or spread the misinformation about how the vaccine's going to help you and heal you when it's actually just the opposite. It hurts you and kills you. I've been called everything from conspiracy theorist on, but I actually have the data right in front of me. So it's been mind-blowing in so many different ways. So media outlets that I thought were on our side have completely not been and received payments from Health and Human Services. And I think that's one of the bigger stories that's out there right now is that you expect that sort of thing from CNN or MSNBC. When you're watching them, you're getting propaganda and it's leftist propaganda, but you probably don't think that about Newsmax or Fox. And they also, under the FOIA request that Blaze Media and another friend of mine, Emerald Robinson, broke with Frank Speech, they were taking Biden tax dollars, Biden COVID dollars, to not just do advertising for the vaccine, but to also do positive only reporting. So Newsmax told me for I guess a year and a half, basically, that I couldn't get my guests on their network because they were a pro-vaccine network. Well, that's how media changes because I have worked at Newsmax before. I always had an open door with them to get any guest I wanted at any time that I wanted. And I couldn't on this particular topic. They were also the same way about the election results. So when they got sued by Dominion, they shut all that down. They had an anchor walk off set when they had Mike Lindell on talking about the election and how there was no election integrity. Anchor got up bold, right? To have an anchor get up on television, live television, and walk off set, you really got to believe your job's pretty safe to do something like that. And he kept his job. So there was definitely Newsmax tells people that they are a conservative outlet. I don't know. Are they giving you the truth about the 2020 elections? Are they giving you the truth about the deaths and injuries from the vaccines? Or are they giving you the truth about anything? Or are they having all the Fauci crew on and all the people who are selling a product to you and they're giving you news stories as if about the vaccine, as if they're actually legitimate news stories, but they're not telling you they're taking money for it. I think that's pretty deceptive. And I think that is a line that has been crossed. If there were commandments of media, one of the ones is advertising and content shall never mix. Because once you take advertising dollars for content, then you've just sold out what? That's why you don't. But the government found and our enemies found that if they threw enough money at certain people who were corruptible, i.e. Christopher Ruddy, who is the CEO of Newsmax, then you can get a news station that says they are pro-vaccine. If you are a news station and you are not doing editorial comment and you are a news station, you are not pro or anti anything. You just give us the facts. Mm-hmm. That's what I expect of a news station. So that's how it's changed in my lifetime in front of my eyes. I'm a little aggravated about it.
I can tell.
I'm a little.
And you're starting to get me aggravated too.
Sorry. It's a deception on the people, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say that if you were one of those anchors or one of those people who just went along because your boss told you to sell this product and sell this thing, and then that product and that thing killed people, then I would look at my hands and see all the blood on my hands. and I would reevaluate what I was doing with my life. And there were people who did that. There were brave people who walked away from Newsmax. Emerald Robinson was one of them. Steve Cortez was the other one. They walked away from, well, a lot of people didn't, so they could stay in front of the camera. They could stay in front of that microphone, and they could fill their ego, and they only killed grandma and your sister and your brother. That's all they had to do. So, yeah, that's how media has changed.
So to reiterate, you're saying that news outlets are taking payment for the content that they are either promoting or not discussing.
Blaze Media did an excellent article on it. They did a FOIA request for who took Biden dollars to not only do advertising, but nothing but positive vaccine stories. Yes.
And I think that's what irritates me, is that Newsmax is a news station that was promoted for being the conservative outlet. If you didn't want to go to Fox anymore, if you didn't want to go to CNN anymore, you could go to Newsmax for the truth. But it seems like even that isn't the truth anymore. That
isn't the truth. And the problem is everything's top-down leadership. This is something that you will learn in your beautiful life, is that whoever the fruit is at the leadership position will be what falls out. And if your fruit is friends with the Clintons, then that's going to be what falls out. And you can't change that, But if your fruit is someone that is tight with God, then that's going to be what falls out of that. So that's pretty much how you can judge what it is that you are. That's one of the tricks you can judge about, I think there's the good thing about the censorship, because that's what we're talking about here, is actual censorship of news. You're not allowed as the viewing public in America to see anything other than what we're allowing. Well, that's just censorship. There's you're not allowing the contrary point of view to come on. Or another point of view, or a factual point of view. So that's a version of censorship, just like Facebook is censoring, So it's interesting, right? So if you look across the board at the thing, I think the COVID story is the best story. The election stuff, sort of, but the COVID story definitely is the place where you see the tyrannical, big globalist censorship of vaccine information and true information. But in that, there's always that silver lining. And the silver lining was for the more they pushed in and tried to control that speech, the more that popped out these great places like Epic Times, or, Charlie Kirk's been telling the truth about the vaccine, and Candace Owens is telling the truth about the vaccine and how it causes tons of miscarriages and child defects, and that because she was pregnant during the time all this happened. So there's been some big names, and Dan Bongino started telling the truth about the vaccine. They weren't there first. The first person that was there was Clay Clark, and Clay Clark needs a lot of credit on this story. I mean, he just nailed it. His research, the way he does things. If you're not following Thrive Time Show on Rumble or on just thrivetimeshow.com, that guy has had this thing nailed, and he's still nailing it. I'm speaking at your event tomorrow. This makes no sense to the viewer. Sorry, but I am speaking at your event tomorrow, and I'm going to play a video of some of his research as to who our true enemy is. It is going to blow your mind. It's in their own words. And maybe after we get finished with this, I'll give you a link to it, and you can put it in the bottom of the comment section of this. But yeah, the bad people that are wrecking our world right now. The reason why you're putting a mask on your face and you're scared out of your mind if you're not walking in God and walking in faith, and you're a TV believer. If you're a TV believer and your world feels upside down and you can't tell me what a woman is, or you're worried, your kids are all whatever goofed up because of school and all of that stuff. If you're living in that world, we have the reason why. It is an actual plan. It is absolutely a plan, and the chaos is all created. So they create the chaos, and then they scare you, and then they find a solution. And then naturally human beings go to that solution. But you really didn't have a real problem in the beginning.
So where would you suggest citizens to go when they want a true news source?
Okay, Epic Times is a great source. Epic Times is one of my favorites. Blaze Media does a lot of great work. Let's see, there's a ton of independent podcasters. I mentioned Thrive Time Show and Clay Clark, cutting edge on all of everything. X22 Report also. Brighty on Television, American Media Periscope. Frank Speech. Frank Speech has some tremendous shows. Brannon House, Emerald Robinson now has a show there. She left Newsmax and went there. I think anything old and establishment that's lying to you and you know they're lying to you, just don't even put a TV in your house. Just don't even watch it. It's poison. It's poison. They're convincing you. They're trying to convince you of things that just aren't reality.
Let's talk about the Trusted News Initiative, NewsGuard, and Good Information Network.
Yeah. So Trusted News Initiative, been up close and personal with those people for the last year and a half. So one of my clients is attorney Tom Renz, and he is the lead attorney on a ton of cases against the government and the vaccines and mandates and people losing their jobs and hospitals and killing people and all of the gnarly stuff that's been happening in order to depopulate, to get rid of a lot of people. So he's been the lead attorney, and factual stuff, he has to be able to prove his stuff in a court of law. You know, he's not out there like with a tinfoil hat and making stuff up and blah, 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 just for giggles. He's actually doing research. He actually has whistleblowers. He actually has government data. He actually has all the facts. And every single time that we would come out with, hey, we have data that shows that 45,000 people have already died. We have data that shows our military, that there's a 300% increase in miscarriages in military that were forced to get this vaccine, and blood clots are a problem. And every time we do it, the good old Trusted News Initiative would come after him. And that's all your fact checker groups. That's all the people that are already leftists. So in 2020, a group of media concerned about the election and COVID, those were the only two topics they were concerned about, came out and did an interview, did an article on the BBC. So it's the BBC, AP, Reuters. Both AP and Reuters are in every single news outlet in America that's a regular talk radio station or whatever. That is what most talk radio and TV stations depend on as their source for factual news. So man, if you can get these two, AP and Reuters, telling the propaganda and doing the COVID push and the vaccine push, well, you have really spent a lot of money and you really have an asset there, right? So that's a great way to control the information. So it was BBC, AP, Reuters, The Guardian, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of the network shows, not Fox, they weren't listed, CNN, MSNBC. That your regular kind of gang. And they all got together and they all agreed that they would stop disinformation, which is the actual information, and they would do a thing called fact checker. So fact checking all came 2020, fact checking on social media, that sort of thing, and fact checking in the news. And so we would break one of these stories, and I'll give this to you. They have about a week window. You have about a week window to get your story out as hard as you can possibly push it to all your Patriot media. We would do them at Clay Clark events. They would go worldwide. We had one story that got over 2 million views on Rumble and through video and all kinds of things. And then after that week, after you're allowed, I don't think you're allowed a week. I think it takes their marketing team about a week to get together a counter formula. Right? So they would come after us. They literally stalked Tom Renz, the attorney Tom Renz. They would show up at his house. They went to his hometown and called everybody in his hometown. They were trying to find dirt on him. Poor guy. And they couldn't find anything on him. The only thing they found was like a bankruptcy in his 20s. It was like nothing, which has nothing to do with anything. They called every person from his wife to his Everybody that was anybody, they called. And then finally they showed up uninvited at an event, broke into the event, broke onto the media row and ran up and like started asking him questions. And he sat down and he talked to them for a little while. And then they wrote their nasty little article in the Washington Post. And then anytime you go to Google, which is also terrible, and you go to Google and if you type in Attorney Tom Renz, that nasty article is the first thing that comes up. Not any of his 2 million views videos or any of his research or any of anything that he's done in the last 2 years to try to save lives, save souls, and save America. None of that. It's a nasty, poorly written, I must say the reporter was quite illiterate, and article about how Tom Renz is a beginner attorney and he doesn't know what he's doing, whatever angle they could come up with. Yep. And I spent tons of time on the phone with the reporter telling him what a great guy Tom was, what a hero he is, how he's trying to help people. None of that mattered. It's against their propaganda. It's against the globalist push. So that's the Trusted News Initiative. And they eat people up and they try to cancel them out. And they do it over and over and over. And what they're doing, though, is AP and Reuters, they're spending all of the credit they ever had on credibility. It's all gone. They are nothing but a propaganda machine. So the other one's NewsGuard. NewsGuard is a thing that's coming to your kid's school. That's the next thing where they're trying to control all the information that your kids see and hear. And so look up, if you can, go on DuckDuckGo or go on some kind of search engine and type in NewsGuard and type in Children's Health Defender. And basically it is a big pharma, deeply big pharma funded way that they are going to give, the propaganda to children in schools. That's it in a nutshell. So that's just one more way that they're going after kids in schools. And then Good Information Network is a billionaire funded George Soros product. And what he's doing, and this is the scary, scary thing about that. So they are not leaving any stone unturned. Not a single one. Not your rural country music station, not your rural newspaper, a small town, whatever. No. All of it. They are megalomaniac billionaires that have been planning on taking over everything. So nothing is safe from their touch. And so Good Information is funded by the billionaire that runs LinkedIn and the globalist billionaire George Soros. And they are, again, specifically heading into the rural markets where people don't, they said in the thing, where people don't have access to good information unless it's disinformation. So that's your local town radio. They're going after it, but so are we. So
that is the light. We're going after it too.
We'll see if free speech wins or if propaganda censorship wins. We'll see.
That's the battle we're in right now.
And I'll tell you this, our God is bigger. Our God's bigger. They are not working on God's behalf, and they're not working on your kids' behalf, and they're not working on your health's behalf or the behalf of America. They're working on their bottom line and their megalomania. That's what they're doing.
It always reminds me of the Bible story, David and Goliath.
So much.
When you think you're up against that giant.
Right.
But God comes in and saves the day.
But God. But God, Lindsay.
Every time.
Yep. That is it. So have no fear. Be aware. You're going to be shocked a lot. It's an interesting time to be alive. I've never seen anything like this. My business has grown fivefold, and I only believe that that's happening because we're in the right fight. And CCDF just completely blowing up everywhere, like it should.
We are so thankful to have you on our team.
Thank you,
to
Lindsay.
be able to work with you. And thank you so much for coming on Liberty USA today.
Yes, love it. Can't wait for this to be heard by many, many, many more people. Not just my interview, but your whole platform's going to get bigger and bigger.
We're trying. We're working hard. But listeners, remember that freedom is in your DNA.